Okay, Nicole, should we go ahead and start?
Sure, let's start.
Okay.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah, so I've met many of you. I'm Mark Smith. One of the things I do is pre-law advising, and I'll introduce Dean Gore.
Hi, I'm an assistant dean in the College of Arts and Sciences and also a pre-law advisor. So I know some of you as well, and I also see some names that I think are on my calendar for the future. So nice to meet everybody.
Yeah, and I'm sure, Nicole, you're the same way as me. I've gotten a lot of emails since last Friday, and I'm trying to get appointments scheduled, but I'm a little backed up right now, so it may take a week or two.
Yes.
But,
yeah. Similarly, I know my calendar is getting crowded, but yes, trying to see everyone.
So we'll go through this PowerPoint, which covers some of the highlights. We should be able to get through that in half an hour. And then if you have questions, we can answer those as well. So let's go. So I assume you guys all have figured out already. You got to have an LSAT. You're going to have to work with LCAS. All these things, we'll go through them in more detail. LSAT, I think the fee, that's Otis the dog. Otis, quiet down over there. Come here. So I think the fee is $200. I think the deadline for the November exam was like a day or two ago. So January would be really late. I mean, you could do it maybe with most schools, but it's obviously not ideal. The Credential Assembly service, you're going to have to register, and then you do these reports. I also think they'll give you like what is it, 6 reports for a certain price and stuff. You know, we typically, or at least I typically advise applying to a lot of schools, just because you may get money from one that you don't from another, and then you can negotiate. They put the reports together. It's a nice service, and they've got, you know, their FAQs on their website. I certainly am not an expert on this, but you know, I don't get a lot of questions about it, so I think it works pretty well. Nicole, anything to add about this?
Well, I wonder when you said apply to a lot of schools, what do you consider? What's a good number?
So I might say, I mean, particularly if money's an issue, you know, I'm seeing students 8 to 12 schools, and I don't think that's outside the range. I also think, I don't know what you think, Nicole, I think this is going to be a weird year. And there's a lot of factors in play that it's harder for us to predict how admissions will go. So a couple of factors. One is you've got some seniors who were thinking about taking a year or two off who have now decided, well, because of COVID, I'm not sure what will be available, so I'm going to go straight to school. So I think you might get a little chunk that way. I also know that there were some students who were to start law school the fall of 2020 and who deferred because they didn't want to do virtual online. And then you've got the people who might be worried that it's going to be virtual next year and they don't want to do that. And then I think the fourth factor is, you know, law schools have been financing a lot of their operations from international LLM programs, where they were bringing in literally hundreds of students, most of them from China. And with the restrictions, I think that may not be, so you might see some law schools deciding to bring in a larger class because they need the tuition revenue. So just very hard to just, you know, determine what's going to happen this year. But I still think 8 to 12 would be good.
Yeah, I agree. I think LSAC, it was like there were some webinars and things that they hosted when the pandemic first hit back in March, you know, in April, but I haven't seen anything kind of with updates and data, and probably too early yet to see how the application cycle is going to go this year.
Right. Okay, let's go to our thing. Transcripts. Yeah, in a lot of schools, I mean, typically the Credential Assembly service, you'll get the transcripts out, but a lot of times they just, you know, once you get it to LSAC, they'll calculate your GPA, and then that's what the schools will make their decisions on. I think WebStack is the way they can get the official transcript to LSAC. And then you got to get transcripts even for schools. Like if you took some summer school classes in another school or sometimes in high school you would do coursework where you get a college transcript. You have to get those as well. We're going to talk about international. So my sense is for most WashU students, you're not going to be getting international transcripts, right? Do you know of any programs, Nicole, where people typically have to get them?
No, it's my, from reading what's, on the website is that if it's less than a year, so most people do a semester or a summer, they do not require you to submit an overseas transcript.
Right. So, yeah, I would not waste the time on it. And a lot of times they're hard to do, and they won't figure it into your GPA or anything.
Right.
Hopefully, you've asked for your letters of recommendation. If you haven't, not too late, but I would ask soon. You want to give faculty enough time to talk about it, to write it, and I think, a 6-week time frame is probably appropriate. In terms of who to ask, they typically want academic ones. I think you should have a faculty member who can talk about your writing ability, your work ethic, and your intellectual ability. So, maybe somebody who you had for a language class might not be as good, or somebody who you had for calculus or something. Many times students will tell me, well, there's no faculty that know me. And I think that's not an unusual problem. So what you can do is kind of have them get to know you. So you email them. I wanted to see if we could set up a time to talk. I'm thinking about applying to law school and wanted to see if you might be willing to write me a letter of recommendation. I'm happy to tell you more about why I want to go to law school and what I'm doing. And assuming you get a positive response, setting up a meeting, and then kind of talking them through why you want to go to law school, what you've been doing at WashU, what you've been doing with extracurriculars over the summer, maybe grades. Even a faculty member who knows you well does not know you as well as you know yourself. And they don't always know what law schools are interested in. So you can have that conversation, and then you could say something like this. Thanks again, Professor Jones. If you'd like, why don't I do this? I will send you an email, and I will attach copies of the papers I turned in for your class. I'll attach a copy of my resume, and then I'll also put in writing some of the things we talked about. And then it can say, Dear Professor Jones, thanks again for agreeing to write the letter of recommendation. As we discussed, you'll receive an email from LSAC. I thought I'd put in writing some of the, I'm thinking about law school because then you talk about your interest in the environment and how it's morphed into this. I did well at WashU. In your class, I got an A and an A+. My overall GPA is a 3.6, but I started off pre-med, and my GPA my first year was a 2.8. Since that time, my GPA has always been above a 3.8. I think that better reflects my academic achievements. I'm particularly proud of that because I did extracurriculars. For example, I did this where I would spend 5 to 10 hours a week, but during this week when we did this event, I spent 35 hours. Stuff like that. Just giving them details so they can put that in their letter, and you'll get a more robust letter, and they'll also maybe help develop some of the themes that you want to develop in your application overall. Nicole, anything to add to this?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's great to get to academic letters, especially if you're applying straight through. And even if you are not, you can ask for these letters now. I mean, I think what professors say about your academic achievements is not going to change. So I always encourage students to maybe get these letters before they graduate, even if they think they're 1 or 2 years out of from applying to law school. We can keep those letters for you. And sometimes faculty go on sabbatical, sometimes they go to a different school. It's easier to just kind of get those letters now and keep them, have us keep them.
I couldn't agree more. And you could also put them on LSAC side. And so it doesn't matter.
If you've got your account set up, you can go ahead and upload them to there as well.
If you were going to do that, I would probably wait until the spring, ask for them then, so you get them and at the end of your senior year. And then if you're going to, well, let's say apply in a year, it's only 1 year out of date, that's fine, nobody will care about it. Mm-hmm. And also, I've had one situation where a faculty member passed away, and then the faculty member's spouse, who was also a faculty member, sent me the letters, and I submitted them to LSAC for the faculty member and kind of explained the situation. So it, you know, thank God this kid had these letters.
Yeah.
We were able
Yeah.
to use it. So this is kind of what I was just talking about. Yeah. I'll give you time to look at that. But I think, you know, you're not writing the letter for them, but you're helping them. And like I said, you know yourself better than they know them, that they know you. And giving them factual situations, that's the most help. I worked, you know, during the summer, 35 hours a week volunteering, but then I also worked for money 20 hours. I mean, that shows that you're a hard worker, that kind of stuff. Personal statement, you know, there are some schools that will give you page prompts. I know Harvard gives you a limit. Berkeley wants 4 pages. Most other schools just say, give me a statement. And you know what, I think what we're typically saying is about 1.5 to 2 pages. Most schools don't have a prompt, but it's your chance to be more than numbers. I think University of Chicago Law School has some nice examples on their website. I think we're doing a program in a week or two with, who's the woman from?
With Susan Lowther.
With
Susan
who?
Lowther.
Yeah, Susan Lowther,
Mhm.
about personal statements. And Nicole, I don't know if you've been hearing this, but I've been hearing from more students about more schools doing like additional prompts or specific statements beyond just diversity statements.
I think so. Well, I think there are the, you know, maybe why X law school essays, but then, yeah, some goofy and weird ones. Isn't it Stanford that has like, what 3 songs should we listen to while reading your application, or, you know, things to try to, I guess, I don't know what the point is. I mean, to find out more about you, but maybe discourage some people too who don't want to put the time in to those kinds of applications. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with that. I would try and fill those forms out, or those extra questions out. You know, one of the things law schools are concerned with is their yield. And they, you know, it's not enough that you know, for some schools, they're kind of trying to decide, does this student really want to come to our school? Because if we accept them and then they turn us down, our yield goes down. So filling out the why Penn question makes it more likely that you really are interested in Penn, but also taking the time to answer the kind of goofy questions shows that you're interested, and I think can help you. I know it's a time drain, but I think it's worth it. And then if the schools who have a diversity statement, diversity can be more than just race. It can be socioeconomic status. You know, I'm first gen, I'm a Pell eligible student. It could be something, I grew up on a farm in a rural community. It could be, you know, I went to this high school where I was one of only 3 students that had this particular background.
I think, yeah, I think that's right. I mean, it could be, you know, differently abled. I mean, there's so many different kinds of diversity that I think are appropriate to write about. And I always just say to students, if you've got something to write about, great, but you do not have to make something up if you do not feel that you have something. And so, you know, I have seen students try to write about growing up, you know, in an affluent suburb of St. Louis, you know, as their diversity, and it hasn't worked for me, for sure. I'm not, you know, so you shouldn't feel pressure to write something if nothing is coming to you.
I agree. Yeah, the idea that I'm a white cisgendered male from a wealthy family, they're not going to have a sense of humor about how you're trying to, you know, show that. But it can be a lot of different things. And if you have questions, you can ask Nicole or I, what do you think about this? And then we can tell you. You certainly don't need to do it. Not all schools even ask for it. But I think it's just another chance to talk about yourself.
Can I ask a quick question about
that?
that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So at schools that don't require a diversity statement, but there might be room for it, like in an addendum or something like that, would you say that if you have it written for other schools, it's worth it to just send it to every school, or to limit the amount of extra, they're not really asking for this, that you submit?
I think I would probably go for it, but Nicole, what do you think?
I think so. I mean, if it's an addendum and it's an opportunity to use a diversity statement that you're, really happy with and they haven't asked you about it, I think you could put that in. Mark, I don't know if you're going to talk about addendums more. I mean,
Yeah,
what do you think about, is that coming up?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like the kind of addendum Larkin asked about, I would be okay with that. What I'm more concerned about typically is I find students, I got a trash truck coming by, I apologize. We'll let it go by. Also, my dog hates the trash truck. I'll have students who have, who have maybe their first semester or their first year of WashU was they had a 3.7 GPA, but since that time they've had a 3.9 every semester, and they want to write about that. I wouldn't waste the time. I think that makes it look like you might be kind of a pain because you're obsessing about it. You've got a really good GPA. Nobody's questioning your ability to do the academic work. I think with the criminal or integrity questions, that's something we can help you with. So you just want to be careful about how you fill those out. I think the key there is taking responsibility, being very factual about what happened, taking responsibility for it, and giving them a sense that it won't happen again, that it was an outlier. Were there other addendums you wanted to talk about, Nicole?
No, that was it. Kind of writing an addendum maybe that doesn't need to be really submitted.
Otis wants to come up because he's afraid of the trash truck. And just with all this writing, this is one of the things they're judging you on, is your ability to write. So, have other people read it, people who are good writers, to make sure that everything looks good. And like we said, filling out the YPen is you would want to do that. All the applications I think now are online, and I think they have like an autofill. So once you start them, it's not as bad as it seems like when you first do it. But just make sure everything's done. You filled all the fields out. Whoa, Otis is advancing the thing. Just make sure, you don't want errors, typos or anything like that. In terms of application fees, I've said this to some of you probably, it's perfectly appropriate to ask for a fee waiver. LSAC is pretty tough about granting fee waivers, and they have a whole process. And I think that's hard to do. But with law schools, you could just write them send an email to their Dean of Admissions, Dear Dean or Dear Dean Clifford, if you know the name. I'm a senior at Washington University planning to apply to Cornell Law School. Like many college student, money's a bit tight. I wanted to see if there would be any possibility of a fee waiver. If not, I completely understand and still intend to apply. As background, and in case it matters, my LSAT was a 164 and my GPA is a 3.3 or something like that. And you'll get fee waivers for many schools. They don't want that to be a barrier to your application. Do you advise that, Nicole? Do you think that's worth doing, or because
I do. Students, I think it never hurts to ask, right? Through the schools. I know in the past sometimes you and I they just will send a bunch of. I don't know how they might do that this year, but or if they can. And even what do you think about at the virtual law fair asking about fee waivers?
Yeah.
Seeing the way you get an electronic fee waiver would be something you could certainly ask about.
I think that's great. Yeah. And they know that college kids, money's tight. And, I mean, if you're going to apply to 10 schools, say, and average fee is probably close to $100, I mean, that's $1,000. And so, if you can get 7 schools to give you waivers, that's $700. That's real money. It'll make your parents happy. Or you can not tell your parents and have the extra spending money. Okay. Most schools will want a resume. I get a lot of questions of that because I work in the Career Center. I don't really think it's that big a deal. I don't think, like, if you were applying for a job, I'd probably be telling you, you really ought to keep this to one page. But I think with law schools, if you get a page and a half, it doesn't matter. And it just should correspond to what you're putting in the rest of your application. I think that's all that's really matters. I can't see all this because I've got the pictures over here, but it looks like, you know, this is all going to go through LSAC.
Yeah.
That Credential Assembly Service. Nicole, you want to talk about Dean certificates? I know you handle those.
Sure. So it's a very small number of schools that require a dean certification after you are admitted to the law school. If you plan to attend, those, you know, if you receive one, just send it to that PreLaw email account, and we will take care of that for you. We have to just check with the Office of Student Conduct, and you know, it kind of depends on what the certificate asks, you know, if you had any conduct matters, sometimes they ask if you had, you know, any, I guess, withdrawals, or, I mean, they ask different questions. It's such a small number of schools. I feel like we get them from like Harvard, Yale, Penn, and Stanford. Like it's a very few schools, and you don't worry about it. As soon as you get it, just forward it to our office and we'll take care of it for you.
And, you know, kind of going back, because Nicole mentioned the integrity stuff. I was talking to a student today who graduated and who's applying, and she had an integrity issue. And it was, she was at a bar and she was dancing on a table, and the bouncer removed her from the table, and I think she was, you know, having a very good time, and she was offended by the way he removed her. So she called the police, and then the police ended up arresting her, and she spent the night in jail. Nothing was prosecuted, and she said there's no record of it, but that still needs to be on her record. It's not going to keep her out of law school as long as she handles it the right way. And this bouncer and the police were probably jerks about it and didn't, but she just has to take responsibility and, you know, like I said, let them know it's typically not the incident, it's the lack of candor that can get people in trouble. So I just want you, if you have any questions, come to us, but I would strongly encourage you to err on the side of full disclosure. It's not going to keep you out. It may come up later, and we don't want you having a problem 4 years down the line when you're getting ready to take the bar exam and there's some question about why didn't you put this on your law school application.
Yeah, I think it's all about consistency, right? You don't want to say no to something that the school is going to say yes to.
Right. Consistency and candor, right?
And candor.
So with the LSAC, the Credential Assembly Service, they've got, I got to say, I don't think their site is the best site ever, but it's good training for being a lawyer, trying to figure it all out. And then you can call them and try and get a straight answer. Also perfectly appropriate to call a particular law school if you have a question. I noticed you asked about this. I wasn't sure if I should include this, or maybe going back to Larkin's question. I noticed you is it okay if I submit a diversity statement as an addendum? They'll tell you, they want to help you with the process.
Yeah. And
they're very nice people. I just added on a little bit just to think about the financing of law school. You know, it can be over $80,000 a year. That's a lot of money. Most law students, I'd say 80% of law students are financing it through debt. So if you're one of those law students or those college students who's saying, I'm doing it on my own, you're definitely not alone. You're like everyone else. That's how I did it. Nicole, I think that's how you did it. So, so you just want to think
it is.
Yeah, and it's
lots of loans and some scholarship.
Yeah, and it's real money. And so it's very easy. And I used to see this when I worked at the law school. Students would start, you know, just pretending like it was play money. Well, what's an extra $10,000? And an extra $10,000 is $10,000. And actually it's more because they take out fees and then you're paying interest. So, and you don't want to live like a law student when you're a lawyer. And so just being careful with that. So here's some ways you can think about it. You know, schools will typically consider you for merit-based aid without any separate application. I know NYU has the Ruth Tilden Scholarship for people interested in public interest. Do you know of any other scholarships you specifically have to apply for, Nicole? I don't.
I know University of Chicago also has a public interest scholarship. I'm not thinking of any else right off the top of my head. So I think,
WashU has the Webster. I don't know if you have to do a separate application.
oh, a separate application.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a separate process for the University of Chicago one as well. But I'm not sure about others.
Yeah. But the way it works at most schools is you don't have to fill out an application for most scholarships. My understanding is Harvard, Yale, and Stanford don't give out merit scholarships, but everyone else does. And they're not giving need-based scholarships because you typically have no income. You're independent from your parents right now. You have no net worth. And so it's hard to distinguish. So at many schools, if you're above the median on the LSAT and the GPA, you've got a good shot at a scholarship. If you go to the law school's website, they all have ABA required disclosure forms. Are they called 508 forms?
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Is it fine? Yeah.
And those are great forms when you're coming down to with this, and also when you're thinking about where to go to law school, because they have great placement data. So you can see, like, if you're interested in a big firm, what percentage of their students went to big firms. If you're interested in clerkships, what percentage of their students went to clerkships. And then in terms of entering credentials, they'll give you the cutoff for the 25th, 50th, 75th percentiles, but they'll also talk about scholarship awards. So you can get a sense of how many students get scholarships. Some schools will have a little bit of need-based. I think Harvard has some need-based. I think University of Chicago does. But
or they have, and yeah, I think Harvard, I know, has some very nice loan forgiveness, right? If you, depending on what you go into, and University of Chicago does as well.
Right. And then another thing is, let's say I'm from Missouri, but I get into University of Wisconsin. They might make me an in-state resident, so I get the in-state tuition discount. It's something you can ask for to see how it works. Would I be eligible for this after 1 year? I mean, typically, or many times there's like a $10,000 differential, and so it's real money. And then loans, you don't need to worry about this now. Once you've got to kind of get in, you'll fill out the FAFSA, they'll help you with that, and then and it's not your parents' FAFSA, it's a FAFSA just for your stuff, so it's pretty easy to do. And then they'll help you with all the loan stuff. So it's not a big deal. Even if you've never gotten loans before, don't worry about it. But some other ways that Nicole mentioned, the LRAP, these loan repayment assistance programs. There are both school ones and federal ones. I'm not as keen on these because I've heard of students having problems with it, and sometimes you got to jump through the right hoops. I personally would rather see you getting scholarship money up front. And then think about work during the summer and school year. I don't want you working during the school year, particularly your first year, but in your third year, maybe, in some places that's easier to do than other places. And then working during the summer. If you're lucky enough to get, say, a job at a big firm, they're probably paying, what do you think? You think they're paying like $2,000 a week?
I think at least. It's so high now. It's hard for me to even fathom.
Yeah. So that can put a real dent in your debt. The other thing, many of these schools will have stipend programs. Like we have here at the college, like the law school has one, and they support a lot of their first year students who are doing kind of more public interest type work that is unpaid, and they have a pretty substantial, pretty generous stipend program. So I would maybe want to check out my school to see what they're doing with that as well. Okay, so that's everything, I think, yep, that's it. So what kind of questions, let's see, I think there's some on the chat. I just got to figure out how to get in there.
Well, so Larkin was just pointing out that her study abroad program was a US based institution. I guess it was on a US transcript, and so she had to include that.
Okay, good.
Even though it was a semester.
There we go. Okay, do we have any other chat questions?
No, any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Oh, sorry. Is someone else speaking?
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So you mentioned how if you plan on going to law school later after you graduated, you can ask for recommendations towards the end of senior year. I was wondering if you have any other general recommendations for people who want to go to law school, say like 2 years later, or just like generally later after graduation? Thank you.
I would just ask before you leave, before you graduate, go in to the faculty member, say, Professor Jones, I just want to let you know how much, kind of suck up to him. I wanted to let you know how much I enjoyed your class. That's what I thought college would be like. I want to let you know I'm graduating in 2 weeks. I'm going to be doing a Fulbright for a year. And then after that, I'm thinking I want to go to, I'm planning on going to law school. And then you can blame it on me. The pre-law guy, he's really uptight. He wants me to get my letters of recommendation in early because there's a good chance I'll be applying next fall. And I wanted to see if you'd be willing to write one. And then you go through it. And then you explain to him. You'll get an email from LSAC, the LSAT people. And then you just respond to that. And then when you have it, you won't be able to see it because you'll waive access most likely. But you'll know you have it there. And then you can use it whenever you want. And the fact that it's 1 or 2 years old, nobody's going to care about that.
Yeah, and I think other maybe advice for if you're applying in a year or two is, touch base with one of us or both of us. We are here as your pre-law advisors for life. So you still have that resource here even after you graduate. You still have the Writing Center as a resource after you graduate. I think getting the letters of recommendation now makes sense. Writing your personal statement now does not. You would want to write that closer to the time that you plan to apply to, you may have, I'm sure, other experiences that you would want to write about closer to the time you apply.
Okay, thank you.
Elaine, did you have a question?
Yeah, so I was wondering, I know a couple law schools offer different decision deadlines, so like early decision, regular decision. I was wondering what kind of effect does that have with law schools?
Nicole, you put
I'm muting myself.
I don't know. I mean, here's the thing. I just don't have enough data points to know whether early admissions makes a big difference or not. I'll tell you what my concerns are and some general thoughts. My one concern is scholarship. At some schools, they'll tell you, well, if you come in early, you're automatically going to get this scholarship. So I'm less concerned there. But other schools don't, and I'm worried they're going to screw you in scholarship because if you're committing to go to that school, what's their incentive to give you money? There are some programs, like I think Duke has a program where I think if you get it in by, I'm not sure when, they'll get back to you within 5 days or 10 days.
It's 10 days, but I think you have to be invited to apply to it too, to do the fast track, I think.
Okay, I didn't know that. But I think that can be good because maybe if money's not as big a deal, I might be thinking, okay, well, I'll get that. And then I know if I'm into Duke, I'd rather go there than these other schools and I could limit my number of applications. But I just don't have enough data. My gut reaction is it's not like in college admissions where, we WashU are taking, I think, like about a third of our class through early admission. I think Harvard takes over half their class from early admission for undergrads. I think for law school, it's very much at the margins.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it seems to be different in every school. And again, I don't think that's a bad question to ask an admissions rep, right? And see what they'll tell you, what their system is. Do they have early decision? Is it binding? How does that affect scholarship? It's not as standardized as it is in the undergraduate process. And I think you can just ask the schools that you're interested in.
I think I'm glad you said that. Yeah, because you could say something like this, with my scores, I have a 166 and a 3.4. What would you think of me applying early admission to Penn? I know I'm below your median. Would that make a difference? And you're looking for words. I mean, they're not going to tell you yes or no, but they'll use words. And so that will lead you to believe it. And if they don't, you can say things like, well, would you say I would be a stretch? Have you had many applicants in this area? They're going to try and be vague sometimes. And this is using lawyer skills once again. It's like what you do in a deposition. Well, would you say you've had, like 10% of the students with this kind of profile get admitted or 80%? And, you don't want to be a jerk about it, but try and press them a little bit and see if you can get some clarity on that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Other questions?
I had a quick question about resumes. So after COVID and this past summer, I know a lot of people's internships got canceled. Do you think there's value in putting on kind of a short description of what an internship would have been like, or kind of including it as an addenda?
You could do an addenda. I don't know that I would put it on your resume because that's talking about experiences. You could say I was selected for this program, and just, it was, this very competitive program. Unfortunately, because of COVID, they ended up canceling the program. And so this summer I ended up having to pivot to do this kind of stuff. That would be kind of how you're using it. But they understand that. And even if it wasn't a COVID year, the fact, if somebody didn't have something for the summer, it's not a big deal.
Right, that's not a long enough gap to need to explain. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
The LSAC Law Fair that's happening, I think tomorrow. So do you have any tips about what you need to be doing at a law fair, especially since it's all virtual?
Yeah, that's a good question. In WashU, we're going to be having one, I think in October, right?
Yeah, mid-October.
And so I think what you want to do, kind of introduce yourself. Hello, I'm Mark Smith. I'm a senior at WashU. I'm planning on applying to Cornell Law School this year. I'm going to be getting my application in October. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm really interested in Cornell because of ABC. I visited when I was a college applicant. I remember it was a beautiful campus. I'm looking for a top tier school. I'm thinking about, I want to work out in the East Coast. I saw that you have this program. I'm really interested in that. Is there any particular advice you'd give me on things I should or shouldn't do in my application? And then if you can get the person's contact information, and you don't want to press that too hard, but, to say something like, if you'd like, I'm happy to send you an email once I get my application in. I really appreciate your time. Just, being a nice person, letting them know you're generally interested, and then seeing if you can get a contact, because that way down the line, if you have questions, you can say, Dean Jones, I met you at the LSAC fair and you were so nice and talked to me. I wanted to touch base because, I found out I was waitlisted, and obviously I'm disappointed, but I completely understand. I'm planning on doing this and this to follow up, but I wanted to see if you had any other advice. It just gives you a connection in there.
Great, yeah, thank you.
I think those LSAC fairs are really great. I mean, ours will be great too, but I think, yeah, in this time with all of these virtual things, it's a great opportunity to visit schools and get your questions answered. I don't know if other schools, Mark, do you have a sense, are doing any other kind of events? I haven't looked to see, but I would think that they would be any kind of virtual admissions events.
It's still kind of early, but we're having students come in, yeah.
Yeah.
I also am, sorry. I'm already enrolled in the candidate referral service, and a bunch of schools have been telling me come by our virtual booth and you'll get a fee waiver. So if they're just literally emailing you saying if you show up, you'll automatically get sent a waiver.
Oh, that's great.
That's the thing. Just you guys are, you haven't been admitted to law school yet, so you're, you're just trying to get in there, but put yourself in their place. They're trying to bring in a first year class. They love you guys because you have high LSATs and you have good GPAs and you're good students. And so, they're competing, even if I'm the Dean of Admissions at Cornell Law School, it's a T14 school, blah, blah, blah. But I know that most of you will go to Harvard before you go to Cornell if everything's even. And I also got to convince you to come to Ithaca, New York, rather than Pennsylvania, Philadelphia for Penn or Chicago for U Chicago. And they're all worried about that. So they want to make, the connections, and they want to get you interested. Anyone else have a question? Was this helpful or not? Oh, Sabrina.
Yes. So one of the universities asks for a lot regarding before you even send an application, like meeting with faculty members at the law school and having like a research proposal paper, I guess, of like what you want to study. And I think they had to like from 8 to 10 pages, and it's like a lot of work and a lot of time. So I'm wondering if, I know that that's probably so they can also cut down on how many applicants are applying because, you know, they want to see if they're actually willing to do it. Would you, I don't know, like, do you have any advice on whether or not you should actually do, let's say if it's this semester, because, you know, finals and just everything with virtually online is just different.
What school's doing that, if you don't mind?
I think it's Notre Dame, if I remember correctly. It's Notre Dame or Duke, one of them.
Really?
Wow.
I've heard of that.
Nope.
Is it for a particular scholarship or something, or a particular program?
I believe it was just all applicants are required to submit it. So, and I was looking down their website, you know, like WashU's applications are, it's like very simple. A bunch of other universities are simple, but I remember Notre Dame, I think Notre Dame or Duke, one of them, they just like really stood out with everything that they required from their applications.
Yeah. And they're requiring that of everyone, or they're just asking if you will do it?
Good question. I haven't looked at that in a while, but I believe at that time it was a requirement. I can double check.
I mean, unless you've got your heart set on Notre Dame, I would apply to some other schools first and then maybe hold that back. I mean, that just seems so contrary to what most other schools are doing, particularly if it's like a 12-page proposal or something.
Yeah.
I do remember that Notre Dame, though, it is a Catholic university and I'm Muslim, but for their personal essay, they had asked, not personal essay, or like why Notre Dame, they had asked specifically like, you know, how does this connect to your Catholic beliefs or something along those lines, you know, like, how would you continue on the Catholic faith, like mission? And I'm like, how do I respond to that?
Well, I mean, what you could do, I assume you're not Catholic, so you would say, you know, I've had friends of the Catholic faith. I can be that friend, and they've told me, I'm telling you now, that, you know, a big part of the tradition is service for others, and that's very much part of my life. And I like the fact that Notre Dame sees itself as a service for others, because I suspect that's what they say on their website, and that's what I'm looking for. But this sounds to me, and I'll go look at Notre Dame's site, but this sounds to me like something that might be for a special type of scholarship or a special program or something, because they're not in a position, Notre Dame's a very good law school, but they're not in a position, I think, to put this big of a hurdle up for all their applicants. So I'll look at it too.
Okay.
And I would
Sounds a little bit like that early program that Columbia rolled out, where it's basically like, we'll admit you and then you have 2 years to do something else and write a proposal about what you might do in your 2 years. But that's the only thing I've heard of that's so much extra work. So yeah, I'd be interested to know, what is Notre Dame up to? Any other questions?
So I'd also be interested, is this helpful to you? I mean, I've talked to many of you, or I'm going to talk to many of you. You know, part of what I see this is just kind of, I think this process, you just want to make sure, or at least when I was your age, I just wanted to make sure I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And it's kind of nice to have somebody tell me, yeah, I'm doing it, I'm okay. And I find that a lot of my individual appointments, that's basically what I'm doing, is just telling you, you're in good shape, you're doing all the right stuff. But I get it, because it's a new process and it's complicated and it's high stakes. Are there other things we should have been talking about that would have helped you?
I think something that would have been really helpful when I started writing essays was a like generalized personal statement prompt, diversity statement prompt, and resume prompt, because it was really overwhelming. Like, all the different schools have, like, this school you need to include your interests on your resume, and this school you need to put your, like, the hours, and another school doesn't require that. It just says a resume. So like maybe compiling it so it's like the most detailed instructions that you could possibly get from each school so that you can just kind of submit the same thing to every school. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure because I think, I mean, each school is a little different and they want you to submit what they're asking, you know?
Yes.
And I wouldn't want you to do all this work and then maybe you're only applying to 7 schools and they don't have this. And then you're saying to me, well, why did I do this? But I think raising, and I try to do this, but I could do a better job with it, is the kind of things you are going to possibly be asked. Like you said, number of hours you work, or, I mean, it gets even worse. This is just for the future. Like when you apply to the bar, they're going to ask you the address of every place that you've, where you've lived. So write down all your college addresses because, man, I took some time off. I couldn't remember, like, you know, I remembered the name of the dorm, but I couldn't remember my number and everything. So, well, Larkin, you and I will talk so we can talk more about that, what we can do.
Yeah, totally. It was more of just like I guess a general comment on the fact that the law school application process doesn't have a common app like applying to college does. I found it somewhat frustrating.
I would love to see a common app. Make your guys' life a lot easier. Okay, well, it sounds like we've got to the end of our questions, unless I have, oh no, the chat is, that's you, Nicole, right?
That's me. I just tried to put in there, you know, the upcoming personal statement workshop and the law school fair. If you guys aren't signed up for weekly pre-law announcements, I would encourage you to do that and reach out to me if you need the link for how to sign up for that.
Yeah, and as far as, I can't speak for Nicole, but for me, like I said, I'm backed up. If you have a specific question, it's probably just better to email it to me because I'm pretty good about getting that out. If it's something where we need to have a discussion, you know, if it's something like my student this morning, she wanted to talk to me and she said it was important and quick and I didn't, and that she needed to do it now. And it turned out to be an integrity thing. She just could have put that in the email and I would have understood. But then sometimes it's more, I just want to review these big things or whatever, and then we'll just set up a meeting. So good. Okay. Well, we'll probably do something. Don't we usually do something in the spring about wait lists and stuff, Nicole? I think.
You usually do. Yeah. I mean, kind of just what to expect in law school kind of thing. I think you do in the spring.
So we'll do that in the spring as well. Yeah. And if anything comes up, you let us know. So we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Hope everyone continues to have a good semester.
Yeah. Keep us posted.
Okay.
Bye.
See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.